Hi, I'm Matt Dolney, and this is your Denver Broncos versus the Los Angeles Chargers Monday Night Football game preview. Hey, the Broncos are back once again on prime time, coming off a 12-9 overtime loss at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts there last Thursday Night Football. What a great contest that was. You know what? I almost kept a straight face for that. Now, meanwhile, the Los Angeles Chargers, they needed a missed field goal to out-Brown the Browns, to out-Charger the Browns, whatever you want to call it, as they defeated the Cleveland Browns last week to push their record to 3-2 to sit second in this AFC West division. We know things are shaping up all kinds of crazy here in the AFC West. We got the Denver Broncos doing what they're doing. We got the Chargers trying to not out-Charger themselves. We got the 4-1 Kansas City Chiefs, and we've got the 1-4 Las Vegas Raiders, who've lost all four of their contests by a combined 14 points so far this season. Now, let's turn our attention to the tail of the tape here, starting with the Denver Broncos signal caller, Russell Wilson. This past week, Russell Wilson went out and had some injections on his shoulder. Let's hope he can inject some life into this Broncos offense. So far this season, only the Washington Commanders are worse on go-to-go type situations there on third down, as the Broncos need an average of 8.4 yards per third down attempt here to convert so far this season. How do you put yourself in such a bad position to begin with? Well, you know what, Mr. Wilson? First off, it starts by just averaging 6.3 yards on early down passing situations, and then again, walking yourself into unnecessary sacks. Wilson has been sacked 16 times so far this season in 5 games. And the Chargers, they have this guy by the name of Khalil Mack, who has been able to get to opposing quarterbacks once or twice over his career. Now, some positive news. The Chargers, they are allowing the 13th most fantasy points per game this season to the quarterback position, allowing the 5th most passing touchdowns, 10 so far. Maybe this is the week Wilson will check to see if there's anything open on that right side of the field. Then again, it is still Russell Wilson, and I don't trust him. Now, Justin Herbert, I do trust him, even though he's coming off a off week, so to speak, against that Cleveland Browns team. Last week in Cleveland was the first time in quite some time in which Herbert was held to less than 300 yards passing on the road. Now, despite being held to 228 passing yards and just a single passing touchdown, Herbert remains second in the NFL behind only Josh Allen with 1,478 passing yards and 5th in passing touchdowns with 10. Denver is allowing, to their credit, just 10.3 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season, and they did manage to get after Matt Ryan last week with 6 sacks and 2 interceptions. Bradley Chubb is the name to watch in this contest as the Broncos edge rusher leads the team there with 5.5 sacks so far. Now, don't forget to make sure you point out where Baron Browning is going to be and where he's lining up. He had 1.5 sacks there last week and 6 quarterback hits against the Colts last week. I mean, this was pretty much the only entertainment that we had in that Broncos-Colts game was watching this Broncos defense. That said, last week against Myles Garrett and the Browns, Herbert was sacked just once on 35 dropbacks. Now, turning our attention to the running back position there for the Denver Broncos, Melvin Gordon. The good news for the Broncos backs this week, the Chargers are allowing more fantasy points per game than any other team through 5 weeks. The Chargers are allowing 32 fantasy points per game and have allowed the 5th most rushing yards to backs this season, 619, while also adding an additional 191 yards in the air. Gordon is a sneaky play once again this week, as he is currently 7th among running backs this season in yards per route run at 1.61. The other backs here in the Broncos backfield, Mike Boone, Latavius Murray. How much Latavius Murray are we going to see this week? He was signed a couple weeks ago off that New Orleans Saints practice roster. He was not on Thursday Night Football there because of the short week. And something in my gut, I got this funny feeling, and no, it's not the Thai food I just had for supper. It's Murray is going to mess around and somehow end up as the goal line back once again. And somehow, when it's all said and done, when the dust settles in Denver, he is somehow going to lead this backfield in fantasy points by the end of the year. It's just this feeling I get. I got no facts, no numbers, nothing to back this, but just doesn't this just feel like this is what would happen with this Denver Broncos offense? Now, if you look at the Broncos backs usage there in week number 5, Melvin Gordon, he saw 52% of the snaps, 15 carries, 3 targets, 103 yards. While Mike Boone, he saw 46% of the snaps, 7 carries, 3 targets, combining for 85 yards. Now, it really does show that this backfield is going to be split, pretty much like it was with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams prior to Williams' injury. Now, the Chargers, they're not too worried about their backfield. They got this guy called Austin Ekeler. Now, Ekeler has posted back-to-back games in which he has averaged at least 4.5 yards per carry. And if you know me, I've been knocking him all season with those yards per carry. Not anymore. He's also got 5 touchdowns in the last 2 contests, doing it in both the run game and the pass game. Last week against the Browns, Ekeler put up 173 yards on 16 carries, adding 4 receptions for 26 yards. I'm not very good at math, but that's about 10 yards per carry plus. Now, Ekeler has been one of the top backs this season when it comes to avoiding tackles, as he has an avoided tackle rate that sits just behind Nick Chubb at 44%. 2 weeks ago, we saw Josh Jacobs gouge this Broncos run defense to the tune of 144 yards on the ground and on 28 carries. And then last week, Deion Jackson, not Jonathan Taylor, not Nyheim Hines, would go on to average 4.8 yards per carry on his way to 63 yards on the ground. Don't want to talk about the ground? You want to talk about the air? Let's talk about Courtland Sutton. Will the Chargers put J.C. Jackson on Sutton this week, or will it be Asante Samuel? Jackson, he's being paid to be that guy to take away opposing teams' top options. But Samuel, he's been the better of the two thus far. Actually, you know what? In fact, Bryce Callahan has been their best defender in the pass game, and he typically works out of the slot. Now, last week against the Colts, Wilson seemingly only had eyes for Sutton there, who saw 11 targets, catching 5 of them for 74 yards. Per my good friend there, Dwayne McFarland, and PFF data, on average, an NFL receiver earns a target share of 29% of the time when they face single-man coverage. Your 2022 leaders, Mike Williams, 55%, Tyreek Hill, 45%. And then you've got the three-way tie between Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and Courtland Sutton at 44%. So you know when there is single-man coverage, the targets are going to come to Courtland Sutton. Now, shout out to Courtland Sutton for ripping the ball away from his own teammate there, Montrell Washington, and getting fantasy managers a little bonus points midway through that third quarter contest against the Colts. Now, the other receiver for the Denver Broncos is Jerry Jeudy. I mean, when he shows up, it hasn't been very often this season. Against the Colts last week, Jeudy saw 8 targets, catching just 3 of them for 53 yards. So far on the season, there appears to be some kind of disconnect between Wilson, Jeudy, KJ Hamler, pretty much any receiver not named Courtland Sutton, because Judy's catch rate has been less than 50% so far. Now, Judy's Twitter bio says he can do anything he sets his mind to. So hopefully he has set his mind to helping Russ cook in the kitchen this week. Now, to his credit, Jeudy did average 10 yards after the catch per reception, which is the 5th highest mark amongst receivers there in week number 5. Jeudy against J.C. Jackson is an advantage that I believe that Russell Wilson and the Broncos can take advantage of, as Jackson has struggled in coverage since working his way back from injury into this lineup. And then finally, KJ Hamler. How do you think that conversation went post-game there after we watched KJ Hamler slam his helmet in disgust, basically because Wilson refused to look at the right side of the field? Remember, we should have knocked Mitch Trubisky for that kind of stuff. How come we're not talking about Russell Wilson in the same breath? Look, the film, it doesn't lie. Hamler could literally have walked into the end zone with that touchdown in overtime. This week, he gets Bryce Callahan, so don't expect too much action coming his way. Now, for the Chargers wide receivers, how about we talk about some Mike Williams and what he has been able to do when Keenan Allen has not been available? Since 2020, Mike Williams has averaged a 23.4% target share and averages 2.11 yards per route run, which is right up there with the Cooper Kupps, the Devontae Adams, the Justin Jeffersons, Tyreek Hills there, Stephon Diggs, the A.J. Browns, you name it. Mike Williams is right up there in those yards per route run when Keenan Allen has not been available. Last week, he was even better than those numbers that it was previously set out there. Look, he posted 10 receptions for 134 yards against the Browns, and he also averaged 13.4 yards per reception. A deeper dive into his day would also show that he had a 39% target share and averaged over 4 yards per route run. This week, you should see plenty of Patrick Surtain on Mike Williams, but teams have been smart and moved their best pass catchers around to get around this vaunted Denver Broncos pass defense and Patrick Surtain. Now, that said, the Broncos, they did have a major loss in that back end there as Ronald Darby tore his ACL last week. So it'll be up to Kwan Williams and Damari Mathis there to see if they can continue to limit opposing receivers to the second fewest fantasy points per game standard that has already been previously set. Does Keenan Allen play this week after missing the previous 4 weeks nursing his hamstring back to health? Do the Chargers risk this and further damage later on? We shall see. If I'm the Chargers, I'm strongly considering holding out until at least the week 8 bye there and have him ready to go week number 9, 100%. Allen, he did return to practice on Wednesday there, but as this is a Monday night contest, unless you have a Joshua Palmer or perhaps even one of these other Broncos pass catchers, I'm probably pivoting from this position here, pivoting away from Keenan Allen altogether. Now, Joshua Palmer, look, while Allen has been injured, I have to admit I was expecting a much larger role for the Brampton, Ontario native. Turns out Austin Ekeler and Mike Williams were the only ones to step up and fill that void in this Chargers offense. Now, the tight end positions, we've got the Broncos tight ends. I mean, Eric Saubert there, Eric Tomlinson, Albert Owigabanam there, Greg Dulcich. But we're not even going to waste our time talking about these guys because they haven't done nothing. So let's turn our attention to Gerald Everett, who was among the leaders again in week number 5 when it came to route involvement, getting in on the action 74% of the time. Unfortunately, getting involved does not necessarily mean getting targeted. He was just targeted 3 times, catching one of them for about 2 yards. It was only the second time this entire season which Everett has been held under 50 yards receiving. And this week he faces a Broncos team that has allowed 10.14 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends and has allowed just 187 yards and 2 touchdowns in 5 games to the position. With that all being said, if you want to put yourself in the premier position in your fantasy leagues, you have to head over to fantasypoints.com. Use promo code 22Vipers10. Get 10% off that subscription there. We got fantasy points data. We got Graham Barfield. We got Scott Baird. We got Wes Huber, John Hansen, Tom Broly, Jake Tribby. We got everyone you could possibly want over there writing articles on a daily basis. So trust me, get that subscription today. Score more, and we'll see you next week.